That was one of the hardest things for me as a mental health professional, was shifting from a mental health professional to a business owner.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and this is episode number 307 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. And so glad you're with me. As I like to say, so glad you're with me on this journey, and hope you're having a good start to the holiday season. As I'm recording this intro, we've just finished the Thanksgiving holiday, and this episode's coming out right after the holiday. I apologize for this episode coming out a little bit late this week, but I'll share here in just a few updates for me just personally. But but we're here and we'll continue to be here. I'm looking forward to you hearing in this episode my interview with Sarah Rivera. And Sarah is such a lovely person. I don't know any other way to say it, but she was a fellow counselor therapist that I met in Savannah, Georgia at the Wise Practice Conference back in October. And we recorded this shortly after the conference. But anyway, Sarah and I kind of dive in deep to just thinking about the balance between running a business and being business-minded, plus having the heart of our profession. We, I think one of the things that I think a lot of us struggle with, and I know I have over the years, is just that balance between, okay, you're running a business, you have to treat it like a business, you need to make money, and then the soft side of things of being a caring person and being someone that is there to truly help others. And I think sometimes that can get kind of confusing for us. It can become a little bit of an internal battle. Also, just the whole, we really kind of tackle this topic of competitiveness, and the reason that we really don't need to be competitive in our business, because there's more than enough people that need our help. And so looking forward to you hearing that conversation with Sarah, and again, is one of my favorite interviews this year. And it was a timely one for me. And as I mentioned in the episode about my wife's struggles with her health, unfortunately, she passed away the day before Thanksgiving. And so personally, I'm dealing with my own grief and my own things. And so I want to share that with you. I don't want to bring this down too much of a notch, but I've had so many wonderful people reach out to me and offer their condolences and just the support. And as Sarah and I talk about in this episode, just the importance of community and how that is so necessary in enabling our success, but also in just helping us in our practices and in our lives. So anyway, I'll share with you later on just more about my wife's story, and I'll probably have just a whole episode dedicated to that and my journey as a caregiver and, dealing with grief and all of those things. But anyway, that's for another time. But before we get to my interview with Sarah, I'd love for you to hear more about one of our sponsor from the podcast, TherapyNotes, but also one of the members of the Psychcraft network. So here's more about that.
Hi, I'm Whitney Owens. If you don't know me, I am the person behind the Wise Practice podcast, which is part of the Sightcraft network of podcasts. I am so proud to be a part of this network along with my good friend Gordon Brewer, who's doing such amazing work on helping people on their practice journey. If you haven't discovered the Wise Practice podcast yet, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'd love for you to join us as we explore how to grow a faith-based practice that brings you the income you need and the lifestyle you want. Be sure to check out the podcast and other helpful information at whitneyowens.com. There you will learn more about the Wise Practice community, how to become a member, as well as information on the 2023 Wise Practice Summit. And hey, Sightcraft Network is a sponsor, so hope you can make it.
Have you ever wished your private practice could run as smoothly as a well-oiled machine? Well, look no further because TherapyNotes is here to revolutionize your practice. TherapyNotes is the complete practice management system you've been dreaming of. With everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with clients remotely, create rich documentation, and handle insurance billing, it's your secret weapon for a smoother practice. And the best part? It's accessible wherever and whenever you need it. Yep, even on the go. Imagine having more time for what truly matters, your clients. It's like having an extra set of hands, but digital. And here's the kicker. It's the very EHR Gordon relies on in his own practice. So, you know it's the real deal. Say goodbye to paperwork nightmares and hello to more time and better quality care. Check out TherapyNotes today at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Oh, and don't forget to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free. That's practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes with the promo code GORDON. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm really excited for you to get to know Sarah Rivera. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and Sarah and I got to meet in person even before we did the podcast, and we were both at the Wise Practice Conference in Savannah just a week or two ago, and I really enjoyed getting to know Sarah, and you're in for a treat getting to hear her story and just some of the things she's learning about. She is a true pro, and so I'm looking forward to you hearing from her. So, Sarah, as I start with everyone, tell folks a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Sure thing. So I'm saying hello all the way from San Antonio, Texas, and I have a small group private practice there called La Luz Counseling. It was a result of solo turned into group during the pandemic when all of us thought our businesses would fail, but then it all just kind of increased and turned, I think, tenfold in a way that none of us could have ever anticipated. So from there, after realizing there's a bit of a need in terms of support that mental health professionals can find from other mental health professionals, I launched something called the Counselor's Mentor. And it really is exactly what it sounds like, is just to offer mentorship and guidance for developing mental health professionals during the in-between stage when they're not quite sure what to do next.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And one of the things I know that Sarah and I talked about was just kind of her evolution of thinking about things differently, particularly going into group practice and just thinking about, kind of getting away from some of the stigma we create for ourselves by being too competitive. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a good way to put that, but what do you tell us more about that, Sarah? Just kind of what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for bringing that up, Gordon, because I think that that's an area that a lot of people don't speak about too openly within our field. It's almost a given in other business industries that there's going to be a certain idea or concept behind competitiveness. You often look into business text and guidance, and it says view your competitors. And I realized that was kind of a hard one for me to swallow as I was looking into the business development portion of being a private practice owner. And that was one of the hardest things for me as a mental health professional, was shifting from a mental health professional to a business owner. Mm-hmm. And I felt a little bit of tension and kind of a negative pool. And the more that I looked into it, the more that I realized that this idea behind competition and competitiveness was actually a result rather of the scarcity mindset of there not being enough,
Mm-hmm.
of somehow giving you this referral as money out of my pocket. And it was really disheartening. I'm going to be honest. When I
Mm-hmm.
initially started off wanting to learn about business ownership and thought that the best people to talk to were other fellow mental health business owners, and some of the kind of negative response I received early on. And that was
Yeah.
really tough, I'd say, especially as a young developing entrepreneur. It was very discouraging. And so
Yeah.
that feeling of competition almost made me question if I was in the right space and place.
Right. Right. And yeah, it's interesting in the time that I've been doing kind of private practice consulting and doing the podcast. I don't know why, but it seems like it's evolved a little bit to where there is this sense of competition that's kind of coming up. I don't know if that's just my perception, but didn't always used to be that way. And I think you're exactly right. I think when we can pull ourselves out of that way of thinking, we're going to we're going to figure out that there's more than enough, and getting away from that
Absolutely.
scarcity mentality. That scarcity mentality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, one of the really sad things, Gordon, is even if you and I live to be 500 years old, I don't think that we would ever catch up to the mental health need that the
Mm-hmm.
people of this world have. Like there's always going to be an influx of people who need mental health support, mental health care, mental health attention. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an alarming need that we have, that we need as many of us out there as we possibly can. We need
Mm-hmm.
people to be competent and have confidence and to be efficient at the work that they do, whether that's in private practice or an agency or nonprofit. Like we need as many people who care as humanly possible because we're
Mm-hmm.
never going to get ahead of this. I hate that. I say that in a sentence, but it's true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It really is. So, yeah. So, as you have moved into private practice, and maybe give folks a little bit of the story behind how you decided to go into private practice and kind of your journey into it, and maybe some of the things you've learned or mistakes you've made that maybe you've learned from, that kind of thing.
Oh boy, that's going to take us a few hours. No, I'm teasing. But I will say that the amount of mistakes that I made early on are just, oh my gosh. Thankfully that I have a God who really takes care of me, gives me lots of
Mhm,
second chances because those mistakes were big from the get-go. I mean, little
mhm,
things to big things. For example, I can remember starting in solo private practice and thinking, well, brand colors, huh? Let me just go with my favorite color,
mhm,
make it personal to me. So my name was the business name was my actual name, and it had my favorite colors, and it just spoke Sarah, until I realized my maiden name may not always be my name. And I got
mm,
married, and my maiden
mhm,
name then changed to my
mhm,
married name. So here I
mhm,
was with a business name that was different than my married name going forward. And then the
mhm.
rebranding that had to occur. It was just one of those silly things that I didn't think future wise
Yeah,
about. So
yeah.
casting that vision is so much more important than what is my favorite thing today. That
Mhm,
there has to be the intentionality and a purpose for the
mhm.
today, for the tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
choosing intentionally the things today so that it can have that long lasting impact, even when we're gone. And
Right.
that was a huge kind of gut punch to my system because I didn't know what I was doing. Let's be real. I had
Mhm,
no idea what it took to be a business owner. I had no idea what standard operating procedures were. I didn't have a clue. And so
mhm,
that's what prompted me to take a look into my community to see what information was there. And
mhm,
that's when I started seeing one of two categories of people: people who had the closed fist. I'm closing my fist now so that
mhm,
we can kind of see what that exchange of information was like.
Uh-huh.
It was
Hmm.
very stingy. It was very minimal. It was very closed. And then the other category of people that I'm so blessed to have encountered were the ones with the open hand, where there
Hmm.
was a willingness to share, receive, and give. And it was in those conversations with other professionals, not just mental health professionals, but professionals, that I received a lot of support from in terms of how to think like a business owner, how to think like an entrepreneur, and in essence, how to leave my emotions at the door when I was thinking about my business. And to a
Right,
mental health
right.
professional, that's just absurd. That's how we think. We think in feeling.
Yeah.
So to say, let's pause that when we're talking about the business, but start that
Hmm.
when you have your mental health hat on. It was
Right.
it was a shock to my system completely.
Right, right. And I think, thinking back when I started my practice, I think one of the things that I did is kind of similar to what you're speaking to is I thought I thought about things too small. I mean, didn't
Mhm.
really think about growth and where that was going to take me and all of that sort of thing. I can remember starting to get busy as a solo practitioner and my schedule filling up. And I didn't think to say, okay, what systems do I need in place to make this more automated? And so I was really scrambling, and I remember things falling through the cracks and, double booking appointments and all of those kinds of things, which are just an absolute nightmare and just embarrassing and all of that sort of thing. And so, as you're saying, is really having the forethought of thinking, okay, what's this going to look like 5, 10 years down the road? And being able to create that vision for yourself of what you hope it will look like, and not just thinking too small.
Absolutely. And I will say again, it kind of goes against my preconceived thoughts of what business was. So for example, I can remember that time as well when the expansion started to occur, and there I was hiring additional mental health clinicians, which meant then that I was overseeing scheduling and intake calls and paperwork and making sure
Hmm.
everybody was onboarded. And I was exhausting myself with administrative work
Hmm.
and realizing, why am I feeling so overwhelmed and making less money than I've ever made before? Like, what is
Right.
going on? And it
Right.
makes sense in my simple mind to say, well, why would I pay somebody out for something that if they're not bringing in that income, how am I going to pay them out? So hiring an administrative assistant goes against what our logical brain says,
Right.
but it
Right.
says, well, they're not bringing in any money, hypothetically. So let's not hire them because it's not like we have money to spare. But here's the thing, we can't afford not to have administrative support.
Hmm.
Once you hit a certain stage and level of your practice, the amount of time that is saved, it
Right.
really is a cost savings as a result. They're saving you time. So how much is your time worth? Let's just say an
Hmm.
hour or 2 hours. Right there, we're talking $300 that they've just saved by taking that off of your plate that week. So
Exactly.
it was kind of that
Exactly.
little like shift of mindset that was fueled to me by that scarcity. And it's
Right.
kind of that word that I was using before is what prompts the competitive mindset? Well, scarcity. Well, there's other
Hmm.
very, very challenging, very derailing behaviors as business owners that are also a result of scarcity mindset. I'm not going to
Right.
hire an administrative assistant because I'm scared I won't be able to fill in the blank, make
Yeah.
ends meet. I won't be able to pay him or her. I won't,
Right.
it's time that I don't have. It's money I don't have. And it's very counterintuitive to, I think, the blessings that we can achieve if we do have some additional guidance and shepherding.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, it's that whole idea of really learning how to invest in your practice, in ways other than our time. In those beginning stages, I think it is a good idea to bootstrap to an extent and also just
Mm-hmm.
learn the ins and outs of all the different systems and processes that we need to know. But you do reach that tipping point where if you continue to bootstrap, you you're not going to get the return of the investment of your time. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
to your point, being able to that whole scarcity mentality of thinking, oh, if I hire this person to do these administrative things, then I can't, it's gonna, the money I pay to them, I'm not gonna, it's money lost or something along those lines. But in reality, it's an investment, and the return is usually threefold return just by doing that one simple thing. And that's usually, when in consulting with people, that's one of the lowest hanging fruits when people get busy, is to hire somebody to do the intakes and some of the administrative functions of your practice.
Absolutely. And I think you used a good term a second ago, which is the bootstrapping. And
Mm-hmm.
the longer that I'm in this profession and the more mental health professionals that I meet, it's interesting because we all share some similar character traits, some similar like personality traits. And one of
Uh-huh.
those is there's some really great ones. Like we really love to learn, right? That's something that we find as fun, is
Mm-hmm.
learning, reading, watching documentaries, listening to podcasts. And it's a funny kind of thing that I'm not the only one who has said if school was free, I'd probably still be going, like just
Yeah.
to learn
Yeah.
more.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's one. Another one is what you said, is we're used to doing it ourselves. We're
Mm-hmm.
very, very independent. If we don't know the answer to something, we're going to keep on pursuing it. We're used to trying really hard and
Mm-hmm.
obtaining results as a result of our effort. And most of us in grad school probably have a whole bunch of A's in the mix,
Mm-hmm.
and we're the
Yep.
kind of people
Yep.
that if you got a
We're
95,
high
you were upset.
achievers and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
So with those, there's a beautiful aspect of that as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I came to find being a business owner is if I wasn't mindful of that, that was my demise,
Mm-hmm.
because I was so
Mm-hmm.
used to doing it on my own. But what happens when I'm trying to do something that I've never done before and can't? I
Mm-hmm.
can't do it on my own.
Right.
And
Right.
in an effort to try and learn, I talked to more people. And I mean, it was a kind of a vortex of my own thoughts
Yes.
of, am I doing
Mm-hmm.
something wrong? Is this meant for me? And so I think we have to be very aware of some of our personality traits and how sometimes those blessings can be curses if we're not aware of them,
Yes.
and really how to
Yes.
mitigate that as business owners and also
Mm-hmm.
as mental health professionals.
Right.
So that was a
Right.
huge learning lesson for me. Learning, and
Sure.
I'm say learning actively because I'm still learning it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sarah, I know as we were chatting before we started recording, I think this is a perfect segue, and just thinking about what we talked about earlier about being fed and about,
Mm,
allowing others to help us along the way and that sort of thing.
definitely. Because of this profession, we're very used to helping others. It's a service
Mm-hmm.
industry. So we're in the business of helping human hearts and souls, is what I always say. We help to pour into them. We help to feed and guide them. And we help to sometimes catch the fall that their hearts go through. And it's a very demanding job,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally and mentally. And it's the type of exhaustion that is not cured by a nap. When you come
Mm-hmm.
home and you tell a family member, I am exhausted, and they say, well, why don't you go to bed early? And you think, well, that would be nice if that helped to ease some of this
Mm-hmm.
mental fatigue. But the experience that we have as mental health professionals is unlike any other industry. We don't deal with
Mm-hmm.
products, we don't deal with inventory, we don't deal with sales.
Mm-hmm.
We feed into the souls of human beings. Very,
Mm-hmm.
very, very important, very special human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I believe that we often pour out. We pour out everything we've got. We pour out from
Mm-hmm.
our hearts and how we listen and how we walk alongside those who are hurting. And when we do that, it can be real easy to have a routine where we're used to helping others, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
the helper. And that could be a very dangerous walk if it's not mitigated with being helped. or being
Mm-hmm.
spoken into or being poured into. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
goes back to you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's
Yeah.
really an interesting experience when that applies to you professionally, because we may have all experienced that to a certain extent with a family member, a loved one, like you have, Gordon, with your wife, or maybe how a parent would with a young child, is
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly helping others. And so sometimes that physical labor of love is more obvious, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but within our profession, it's kind of like, well, that's part of the deal. No, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not part of the deal to be emotionally fatigued and exhausted to the point that you're questioning this profession. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what we have to get used to. On the contrary, it's important that we pay attention to those yellow flags before they turn red.
Right.
And it's during those stages where you ask yourself, what do I need in order
Yeah.
to be able to continue this? This is
Right.
where I'm supposed to be. But if I
Yeah.
don't change something, I'm going to burn out. So
Mm-hmm.
what do I need? And going back to what we were talking about earlier, Gordon, is that conference where I was able to be around, we were able to be around like-minded individuals in the mental health field who also believe in God. That was huge to
Mm-hmm.
me. Having a
Mm-hmm.
faith-based community is not something common, or believe it or not, where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that, and every single person that I looked to could relate, could understand, and could pour into me from a spiritual stance, but also from a professional one, is, I mean, that was priceless for me. And it gave
Yeah.
me that energy, that extra boost going into the last portion of the year, where I'm just so thankful to God for allowing us to experience that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that you speak so much truth there, Sarah. And thanks for your vulnerability with that, which is, I think that's, kind of a theme that you're talking about is that we, I think as professionals and as people that are supposed to know, using air quotes here, all the stuff about mental health and self-care and all of that sort of thing, we we pour it out and we give, but we I think sometimes we fail to take it in, of being able to, that whole adage, physician heal thyself, kind of mentality kind of thing. And I think it is, I've learned in my own journey, as you mentioned, my wife has got some serious health problems, and we've got hospice involved now and that sort of thing. And I think one of the greatest gifts I've been able to give, not only to her, but to myself, is to allow myself just to receive, of being able to accept the help that people offer, to be able to say, no, I can't do this, and be
Mm-hmm.
able to not see that as a failure, but really see it as a strength. And, for those out there listening, I think the other thing too that I would be pretty adamant about, even though we are therapists, if you don't have your own therapist or someone that you can talk to about all the stuff that we carry, because we not only carry our own personal stuff, but as you've already mentioned, Sarah, we get handed a lot of heavy stuff from the people that we work with. And it affects us. I mean, if it doesn't affect you, you might want to think about being in a different profession. But yeah, it affects us because we are genuinely caring and that sort of thing. And so I think we need to have ways to process all that stuff, whether it's through supervision or through our own therapy, that sort of thing.
No, and thank you for sharing that, and recognizing some of that vulnerability that I'm expressing, because
Mm-hmm.
I find that boldness from you. I've been
Mm-hmm.
following you for years, as I'm sure many of your listeners have, and you've been just so willing to share some of the tough stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that allows others like me to be emboldened by that, to find
Right.
courage in that too. And I think it's important that we're not quick to forget
Mm-hmm.
what it was like in the beginning, what it was like
Right.
yesterday, what some of those
Right.
challenges
Mm-hmm.
were today and will be tomorrow, because there is somebody right behind you. There's somebody
Right.
right in front of you that can help you along the way. And if
Right.
we were just simply aware of one another with the same sensitivity and mindfulness that we are of our clients, like what might that look like?
Oh yeah.
If our,
Oh
if our
yeah.
profession would just
Mm-hmm.
look to one another and
Right.
allow and hold space for some of the uncertainty or some of the doubts or some of the questions. I
Yeah.
think we would all be as an industry, I mean, leaps and bounds ahead. And that's one
Yeah.
of the reasons why I take time to talk with those grad students who reach out to me and say, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm not sure either, but let's try and figure it out together. Because I
Right.
remember what it was like to be there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
been, it's been about a decade and a half, but I remember,
Oh, yeah.
like,
Oh,
what
yeah.
next?
Yeah.
And there are people at different stages who remember that so well.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
and I think that there's a beauty in being able to share in that and say, well, this is what worked for me. Maybe that there's some
Mm-hmm.
other options for you, but having that open hand, like I was mentioning earlier.
Yes. Yes. I think that is so true. Well, Sarah, I'm so grateful for you and the work you're doing, and I've got to be respectful of your time. What sort of parting thoughts might you have for people just around these topics or things that we're talking about?
Yeah. I would say that when it comes to our field and our industry, it's really, really hard. And I have the sneaking suspicion that all of the listeners today probably fall into the mental health field to some capacity or another. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're out there listening and you're feeling down or tired or overwhelmed, um, just know that that's not your cue to quit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a sign from the earth that you're in the wrong place. No, you're exactly where you need to be. God sees you, God hears you. And there are people like us, like me and Gordon, who are willing to help as best we can. So don't feel like you have to walk this one alone. This is not an alone thing, but just know that you can find the support and encouragement if you're willing to seek it, willing to ask for it. But the hardest part is accepting.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's absolutely. Well, Sarah, again, you speak truth, and I very much appreciate your gentle spirit and just all that you're doing. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you and how they can make contact if they'd like to reach out to you and some of the things that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I would say that the best way to get a hold of me is from the Counselor's Mentor website. That's all one word, thecounselorsmentor.com. And if you find something in there that you think is helpful, or if you have a question that is unanswered from the website, I constantly write different blogs to answer some of the tough questions that mental health professionals in the in-between have. So take a look at that section, and that would be the best way to know what it is that I'm up to. Also, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I always put tons of cool stuff there. It's Sarah Rivera, LPC. And so I hope to see you there.
Awesome. So, Sarah, I hope to have you back again on the podcast. And again, it was so good to be with you in Savannah and just getting to know you better. And thanks for all you do. Well, again, big thanks to Sarah for joining me in this episode. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it was such a timely episode for me, and being able to listen to it again. And as I record these intros and that sort of thing, I go back and listen to the episodes. And so it's a good way for me to reflect and just think about these important topics that we try to cover here on the podcast. And I would encourage you to reach out to Sarah. Again, her links to her things are in the show notes and the show summary. And she is just such a wonderful and genuine, caring person. And I'm grateful to her for her work and what she's doing in our profession to make our profession better. And I hope to have more and more people like this on the podcast. And again, just grateful to Sarah for who she is and what she stands for and what she does. Again, thanks for joining us in this episode. Do take time to go over and check out our sponsor, TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice. I don't know that we could operate without them. And they are just constantly improving the platform and adding things. They've got assessments that you can share with clients and all sorts of things that are there. They have a telehealth portal, all of those kinds of things. It's a one-stop shop for everything you need for running a private practice on the back end, as far as filing insurance claims, all of those things. It does just a wonderful job, and I'm really pleased with it, and I'm really grateful to them for being a sponsor of the podcast. But anyway, go over and check them out, practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. And be sure and use that promo code, just Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. So take care, folks. I'll be with you in the next episode, and I hope you are enjoying yourself as we move into the holidays. I know it's a hectic time, but also it's really a time, as we discussed in this episode, a time to really celebrate community and be around those that we love and care for. So take care, folks, and we'll be back with you next week. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.